The archivists had watched countless civilizations rise and fall across the cosmic expanse. As beings of pure quantum consciousness, they considered themselves the pinnacle of evolution, the final form any species could achieve. Their vast network of observation posts scattered throughout the galaxy had documented the development of over 10,000 sentient species, yet none had ever surprised them quite like humans. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at her laboratory window in the Lunar Research Station, staring at the strange patterns of light dancing across Earth's atmosphere. The anomalies had started 3 weeks ago, shimmering, geometric formations that defied every known law of physics. Her team had named them quantum auroras, though she suspected they were something far more significant. Another formation appearing over the Pacific, her AI assistant Araya announced, projecting a holographic display of the phenomenon. Pattern matches previous observations, but energy output is 47% higher. Sarah nodded, making notes on her tablet. As Earth's leading quantum physicist, she had been tasked with understanding these mysterious occurrences, but every answer only led to more questions. The patterns seemed to be attempting communication, yet they operated on principles that shouldn't be possible in our universe. What Sarah didn't know was that she was being watched. In a dimension adjacent to normal spacetime, the Archivist Council was conducting their preliminary assessment of humanity. Their crystalline thought forms pulsed with both curiosity and concern as they observed Sarah's work. They're detecting our presence far earlier than anticipated. First Archivist Nexus communicated through quantum resonance. Their scientific development is accelerating at an unprecedented rate. Perhaps, responded Second Archivist Vector, their consciousness patterns expressing skepticism, but they remain bound to physical form. Their understanding is limited. The Council had spent millennia perfecting their testing protocols. Each civilization that showed promise would be subjected to a series of increasingly complex challenges. Those that passed would be welcomed into the galactic community and shown the path to quantum ascension. Those that failed would have their progress temporarily halted, for their own protection, of course. But humans were proving difficult to categorize. Their technology was primitive by archivist standards, yet they displayed intuitive leaps that should have been impossible. Their social structures were chaotic and inefficient, but they demonstrated remarkable adaptability. Most troubling of all, they seemed to thrive on uncertainty, a trait the archivists had never encountered before. The standard protocols may be insufficient, Third Archivist Matrix observed. Their minds operate in patterns we haven't seen before. Back on the lunar surface, Sarah was making a breakthrough of her own. She had begun to notice that the quantum auroras weren't random. They were responding to human observation. More specifically, they seemed to be responding to human consciousness itself. Araya, run a correlation analysis between observer attention patterns and aurora intensity, she commanded. The AI compiled the data, and Sarah's eyes widened as the results appeared before her. Correlation confirmed, Araya reported. The phenomena appeared to be strengthening in response to focused human attention. Additionally, the pattern complexity increases when multiple observers coordinate their observations. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. These weren't just natural phenomena. They were trying to communicate. But more than that, they were testing humanity's capacity for collective consciousness. In their quantum realm, the Archivist Council reached a decision. Initiate the trials, First Archivist Nexus declared. But be warned, these humans may not respond as expected. Their chaos, it has a pattern of its own. As if in response to their decision, new formations began appearing in Earth's sky, more complex, more demanding. The first trial was beginning, but neither the archivists nor humanity fully understood what they were about to unleash. The quantum auroras intensified globally, forming impossible geometric patterns that seemed to twist reality itself. In research stations across Earth and throughout the solar system, scientists like Sarah began to realize that humanity was facing its greatest challenge and its greatest opportunity. They're not just testing our technology, Sarah whispered. watching the patterns shift and evolve. They're testing our consciousness itself. She didn't know it yet, but she was right. And the archivists were about to learn that testing humanity's limits might reveal more about their own limitations than they were prepared to discover. The quantum auroras had transformed into something far more challenging. Across Earth's atmosphere, vast geometric patterns began arranging themselves into what appeared to be multidimensional puzzles. They twisted through space-time in ways that made observers' eyes water, their complexity increasing with each passing hour. In the Lunar Research Station's main conference room, Sarah Chen faced a wall of skeptical faces. Representatives from every major space agency and research institution had gathered to hear her theory about the phenomena. "These patterns aren't random," she explained, manipulating a holographic representation of the latest formation. "They're a test. More specifically, they're a quantum maze designed to evaluate our understanding of consciousness itself." Admiral James Torres of the International Space Command leaned forward. "Dr. Chen, with all due respect, how can you be certain these aren't a prelude to invasion? We need to be preparing our defenses, not solving cosmic riddles." Sarah's response was interrupted by a sudden shift in the quantum aurora visible through the conference room's dome. The pattern had changed again, but this time it was different. Instead of expanding outward, it seemed to be creating a tunnel through space-time itself. "They're not attacking us," Sarah said quietly. "They're inviting us to solve it." In their quantum realm, the Archivist Council watched with growing fascination. The maze they had created was designed to be impossible for beings still bound to physical form. It required simultaneously perceiving and manipulating 11 dimensions of space-time, something no biological brain should be capable of processing. Their failure should be imminent. Second Archivist Vector noted. Their neural architecture lacks the necessary complexity for this level of quantum manipulation. But humans, as they were learning, had a habit of defying expectations. At research stations around the world, scientists began approaching the puzzle from angles the archivists hadn't anticipated. Instead of trying to solve the maze directly, they started treating it as a collaborative challenge. Teams of researchers coordinated their observations, discovering that the quantum patterns responded differently when multiple observers focused on them simultaneously. Dr. Maya Patel at the Indian Space Research Organization made the first breakthrough. "The maze isn't meant for individual solving," she announced during an emergency global conference. "It's testing our ability to link our consciousness together." Sarah Chen built on this insight, working with HFY. She developed a neural interface system that allowed multiple observers to share their perceptions of the quantum maze. What one person couldn't perceive in 11 dimensions, 100 linked minds could begin to grasp. The archivists watched in disbelief as humans began solving sections of their impossible puzzle through sheer collaborative innovation. Their physical brains shouldn't have been capable of such coordination, yet somehow they were achieving it. Their consciousness, Third Archivist Matrix observed with growing unease. "It's more flexible than we anticipated. They're adapting their perception to match the challenge." The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A group of children playing an online virtual reality game had inadvertently created a perfect model for navigating the quantum maze. Their uninhibited minds, free from conventional physical limitations, had intuitively grasped patterns that adult scientists had struggled to understand. Sarah's team quickly integrated this insight into their approach. Instead of trying to process 11 dimensions through pure mathematics, they began treating the maze like an immersive game. The results were extraordinary. They're not just solving it. First Archivist Nexus communicated, their quantum form vibrating with surprise. They're playing with it. The maze's complexity had been designed to overwhelm any biological consciousness. Instead, humanity had turned it into a collaborative exercise in perception expansion. Research teams around the world began coordinating their efforts through a virtual environment that mimicked the children's game. As the solutions emerged, the quantum auroras responded. The maze began shifting, not in challenge, but in what appeared to be approval. Humanity hadn't just solved the puzzle. They had discovered a new way of thinking about consciousness itself. Admiral Torres watched in amazement as Sarah's team navigated the final sequences of the maze. "I've never seen anything like this," he admitted. "It's like we're evolving in real time." Sarah nodded, her eyes fixed on the shifting patterns above. "That's exactly what's happening," she replied. "And I think our observers know it too." In their quantum realm, the Archivist Council faced an uncomfortable revelation. The maze hadn't just tested humanity's limits. It had revealed something about consciousness that challenged their own assumptions. Physical form, it seemed, might not be the limitation they had always believed it to be. As the last pieces of the quantum maze fell into place, a new pattern began to form in Earth's atmosphere. The second trial was about to begin, and this time, both humanity and the archivists were entering unknown territory. The question was no longer whether humans could adapt to the challenge, but how their adaptation might change the very nature of consciousness itself. The archivists had never encountered a species quite like humanity. After the unexpected resolution of the quantum maze, they initiated their most challenging trial yet, one designed to test the very foundations of consciousness and reality perception. The quantum auroras transformed again, but this time they didn't form puzzles. Instead, they began projecting what appeared to be windows into other realities. Countless possible versions of Earth, each showing different outcomes of human decisions. It was psychological warfare on a cosmic scale. Sarah Chen watched as her laboratory seemed to fragment into multiple versions of itself. In one reality, she saw herself failing to solve the quantum maze, Earth falling into chaos. In another, she had never become a scientist at all. The archivists were attempting to break human conviction by showing the weight of every choice, every path not taken. They're trying to induce existential paralysis. Dr. Marcus Rodriguez, a quantum psychologist, observed from his research station in Chile. By showing us every possible outcome, they think we'll become overwhelmed by the implications of our choices. But humanity had spent millennia grappling with existential questions. Philosophy, literature, and even popular culture had long explored the concept of multiple realities and parallel universes. What the archivists intended as psychological torture, humans began to view as fascinating confirmation of their oldest theories. In their quantum realm, the Archivist Council watched in confusion as their test subjects began categorizing and analyzing the alternate realities instead of breaking under their weight. Their response is incorrect. Second Archivist Vector noted, their energy patterns showing distress. They should be experiencing severe cognitive dissonance. First Archivist Nexus's consciousness rippled with uncertainty. Perhaps we have underestimated their psychological resilience. They seem to find comfort in uncertainty rather than fear. The human response to the reality windows became even more unexpected. People began using them to learn from their alternate selves, gathering insights from paths not taken. Sarah's team discovered that they could use the windows to observe different approaches to scientific problems, effectively crowdsourcing solutions from alternate realities. HFY. Compile data from reality variants, where we successfully developed quantum consciousness integration, Sarah instructed her AI assistant. Focus on approaches we haven't tried yet. The archivists had never considered that their psychological weapon could be turned into a tool for accelerated learning. Across the globe, humans began using the reality windows to explore different possibilities, learning from both successes and failures across countless timelines. Dr. Rodriguez organized a global study of consciousness patterns across the different realities. "We're seeing something remarkable," he reported during an emergency UN session. "Human consciousness appears to maintain certain core characteristics across all variants. There's a fundamental resilience to our awareness that transcends circumstance." The archivist's trial had inadvertently revealed something profound about human consciousness. It wasn't bound by singular outcomes or limited by fear of possibility. Instead, it thrived on exploring alternatives, learning from every version of reality it encountered. Their consciousness is adaptable in ways we hadn't considered, Third Archivist Matrix observed. They're using our test to evolve their understanding of themselves. Sarah's team made another breakthrough when they realized the reality windows weren't just showing alternatives, they were responding to collective human observation. The more people focused on a particular reality variant, the more detailed and interactive it became. "We're not just observing these realities," Sarah announced to her colleagues. "We're learning to navigate between them. Our consciousness is expanding to encompass multiple possibilities simultaneously." Admiral Torres, who had been skeptical of the entire approach, found himself reconsidering his position. "We're not just surviving their psychological warfare," he realized. "We're using it to become something more." The archivists watched as humanity began to demonstrate an unprecedented level of psychological adaptation. Instead of breaking under the weight of infinite possibility, human consciousness was expanding to embrace it. Their test subjects were developing a form of quantum awareness that shouldn't have been possible for beings still bound to physical form. As the reality windows shifted and multiplied, a new pattern emerged. Humans weren't just observing alternate realities, they were beginning to understand the quantum nature of consciousness itself. The very trial designed to break them was instead teaching them to transcend their perceived limitations. "We may need to reconsider our assumptions about consciousness evolution," First Archivist Nexus communicated to the Council. "These humans, they're not following any pattern we've seen before." The third trial was coming to an end, but its implications were just beginning to unfold. Humanity had not only survived the psychological onslaught, but had turned it into a tool for their own evolution. The question now wasn't whether they would break under pressure, but what they would become as they continued to adapt and grow. As the reality windows began to fade, Sarah Chen and her team prepared for whatever challenge would come next. They had learned something crucial. Human consciousness wasn't just resilient, it was transformative. The archivists had tried to break their minds, but instead had helped them discover their true potential. The moment of realization came to Sarah Chen during a seemingly ordinary morning at the Lunar Research Station. She was reviewing data from the reality windows when she noticed something the archivists had missed, a pattern in human brain activity that shouldn't have been possible according to their tests. "ARIA, display all consciousness wave patterns from the last 3 trials," she commanded. The AI compiled the data, creating a holographic representation that filled the laboratory. What she saw made her breath catch in her throat. "They're not just testing us," she whispered. "They're teaching us. And they don't even realize it." The quantum auroras had changed again, this time forming what appeared to be abstract mathematical concepts in the sky. But Sarah and her team had learned something crucial. The archivists' own consciousness patterns were visible in their tests. Like fingerprints left on glass, they couldn't help but reveal themselves through their work. Dr. Rodriguez's team in Chile had made a complementary discovery. The archivist's quantum form isn't actually superior to physical consciousness, he explained during an emergency conference. It's just different. They've convinced themselves that ascending beyond physical form is evolution, but they've lost something essential in the process. In their quantum realm, the Archivist Council remained unaware that their subjects had begun to understand them on a fundamental level. "Initiate the 4th trial," First Archivist Nexus commanded. "Test their capacity for quantum resonance." But humanity was ready. As the new patterns began to form in Earth's atmosphere, research teams worldwide implemented Sarah's plan. Instead of merely responding to the test, they began actively engaging with the quantum frequencies the archivists used to communicate. "Don't fight the patterns," Sarah instructed through the global research network. "Mirror them. Show them what consciousness really means." The response was unprecedented. Humans across the planet began focusing their attention in coordinated ways, creating their own quantum resonance patterns. Physical brains, working in concert, began producing consciousness waves that matched and then exceeded the archivist's own patterns. "Impossible," Second Archivist Vector declared, their energy form fluctuating with distress. "They're generating quantum fields that rival our own, but they're still bound to physical form." That was exactly the point Sarah had been trying to prove. Human consciousness, evolved in the complex interface between mind and body, had developed capabilities the archivists had forgotten were possible. Physical form wasn't a limitation, it was a foundation for types of awareness that pure energy beings couldn't achieve. Through the neural interface network, millions of human minds began working in harmony, creating patterns of thought and awareness that transcended individual consciousness without sacrificing physical experience. They weren't just solving the archivist's test, they were demonstrating a new path of evolution. They've learned to quantum tunnel. Third archivist matrix observed with growing alarm. Their collective consciousness is beginning to operate on our level, but they're maintaining their individual physical forms. This shouldn't be possible. Admiral Torres, watching from the International Space Command Center, finally understood the significance of what was happening. We're not just subjects in their experiment anymore, he realized. We're showing them what they've lost. The archivist's perfectly designed test had become a mirror, reflecting back their own limitations. Humanity wasn't just responding to their trials. They were actively teaching their testers about the value of maintaining a connection to physical reality. Sarah's team took the initiative further, using their newly developed quantum resonance to communicate directly with the Archivist Council. Through carefully modulated consciousness waves, they began sharing the full spectrum of human experience, not just abstract thought, but the rich tapestry of physical sensation, emotional depth, and interconnected awareness that made human consciousness unique. They're not just communicating. First Archivist Nexus realized their energy pattern showing signs of fundamental change. They're showing us what we've forgotten. The fourth trial had transformed into something entirely unexpected. Instead of proving human limitations, it was demonstrating that consciousness evolution didn't have to mean abandoning physical form. Humanity's countermove wasn't just clever, it was revolutionary. Dr. Rodriguez's team detected the first signs of change in the archivist's own quantum patterns. They're beginning to remember, he reported. Their consciousness is showing echoes of physical awareness. We're not just passing their test, we're helping them evolve. As the quantum auroras shifted and danced across Earth's sky, they took on new patterns, ones that showed the beginning of a dialogue between physical and energy-based consciousness. Humanity had turned the tables on their testers, proving that true evolution meant integration, not abandonment of their physical nature. Prepare for the final trial, Sarah instructed her global network of researchers. But this time, we're not just subjects. We're going to show them what consciousness really means. The Archivist Council, faced with evidence that challenged their most fundamental beliefs, had to make a choice. The species they had meant to test was instead offering them a chance to rediscover something they had lost in their rush to transcend physical form. As the fourth trial concluded, both humanity and the archivists stood on the brink of a transformation neither had anticipated. The final challenge would determine not just humanity's place in the cosmic order, but the very nature of consciousness evolution itself. The final confrontation between humanity and the archivists didn't take place in physical space or even in the quantum realm. It occurred in the intersection between both, where consciousness itself took form. The quantum auroras had transformed into something entirely new, a bridge between states of being. Sarah Chen stood at her laboratory window, watching as the patterns above Earth shifted into configurations that defied description. But this time, she wasn't just observing. Through the global neural network, she was part of something larger, a collective human consciousness that maintained its individual perspectives while achieving quantum resonance. We're ready, she announced to both her fellow humans, and through the quantum frequencies, to the archivists themselves. Show us your final test. The Archivist Council hesitated. Their experiences with humanity had shaken their most fundamental beliefs about consciousness evolution. First Archivist Nexus's energy form pulsed with uncertainty as they initiated the final trial. This will determine everything, they communicated. But even they weren't sure anymore what everything meant. The final test manifested as a challenge that should have been impossible, a complete separation of consciousness from physical form. The archivists believed this would prove once and for all that transcendence meant abandoning physical existence. But humanity had learned too much to accept this false choice. "We don't need to choose," Dr. Rodriguez broadcast through the neural network. "Our strength lies in integration, not separation." Through their connected consciousness, humans began demonstrating something unprecedented. Instead of trying to separate from their physical forms, they showed how consciousness could expand while maintaining its connection to physical reality. The neural network hummed with the combined awareness of billions, each individual contributing their unique perspective to a greater whole. The archivists watched in astonishment as human consciousness achieved quantum states while remaining firmly anchored in physical experience. It was like watching a symphony where each instrument maintained its unique voice while contributing to a greater harmony. "Impossible," second archivist Vector declared, but their energy patterns showed signs of transformation. They're achieving quantum consciousness without abandonment of form. Sarah's team had prepared for this moment. Through the neural interface, they began sharing not just thoughts, but the full spectrum of human experience. The taste of morning coffee, the warmth of sunlight, the complex emotions of love and loss, the thrill of discovery. These weren't limitations to be transcended. They were fundamental aspects of a richer form of consciousness. "You haven't evolved past physical form," Sarah communicated to the archivists. "You've forgotten half of what consciousness can be." The effect on the Archivist Council was profound. Their energy patterns began to shift, showing signs of remembering sensations and experiences they had dismissed as primitive. Through humanity's demonstration, they began to understand what they had lost in their rush to transcend. Admiral Torres, monitoring the situation from Space Command, watched as the quantum auroras began to take on new patterns, ones that showed the beginning of real communication between humans and archivists. "They're not just testing us anymore," he realized. "They're learning from us." The final trial transformed into something entirely unexpected. A collaboration between physical and energy-based consciousness, each learning from the other. Humanity showed how physical experience enhanced rather than limited quantum awareness, while the archivists shared their understanding of quantum states. "We were wrong," First Archivist Nexus announced, their consciousness pattern showing signs of fundamental change. Evolution isn't about transcending physical form. It's about integration, achieving quantum consciousness while maintaining connection to physical experience. Through the neural network, humanity demonstrated the true potential of consciousness, the ability to exist in multiple states simultaneously, to maintain individual perspective, while participating in collective awareness, to experience both quantum and physical reality as parts of a greater whole. The archivists made their decision. Instead of judging humanity's worthiness to join the galactic community, they proposed a new kind of partnership. Together, they would explore what consciousness could truly become when it embraced all forms of experience. As the quantum auroras began to stabilize into permanent bridges between physical and quantum realms, Sarah Chen looked out at the transformed sky and smiled. "We didn't just pass their test," she said to her assembled team. "We helped them remember what they'd lost." The story of humanity's encounter with the archivists became a legend across the galaxy, not as a tale of one species proving superior to another, but as a reminder that true evolution means integration rather than abandonment. Physical form wasn't a limitation to be transcended, but a foundation for types of experience that enriched consciousness itself. In the years that followed, human and archivist consciousness continued to evolve together, each learning from the other, creating new forms of awareness that neither could have achieved alone. The quantum auroras remained in Earth's sky, no longer as tests or trials, but as symbols of a new understanding of what consciousness could become. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, other species looked toward Earth with new interest, wondering what other surprises this young species might reveal about the true nature of evolution and consciousness.